In high school, we hear the usual gossip making its round about a duo who are apparently a match made in heaven. The hype behind their presumed relationship is so large that even the classroom simps have to admit defeat. We finally get to see the famed pair and are introduced to the student council president, Inokami, who is walking confidently down the hall and proclaiming her plans to maintain order in the school, while the Beka simp Kazuki walks behind her, excited that he gets to be so close to a girl. But even if he is a simp, he's at least got hoes and a pretty face. But the same can't be said for Usato, who is such an ugly loser that he got the opening spotlight stolen from him in his own anime. He is just your average high school boy with zero friends and zero hoes, so the only thing of interest that happens to him all day is finding a fallen nest of baby birds. He may be an outcast, but he is at least a kind one, so he helps the birds back into their nest and says they can pay him back later if they want to. But then he realizes that he is talking to a bunch of baby birds and leaves before he gets any weirder. He envies all the other impressive high school students and wishes he could be like them as well, or at least get some friends so he doesn't have to talk to birds all the time. Usato decides it's time for him to go home, but his luck keeps on getting worse as when he goes to his locker, he finds that someone has taken his umbrella. He spots another one over by the wall, and for a moment he thinks about just snagging it and leaving its owner stuck here, just like he is. But then again, so far being kind is the only remarkable trait he has, so he decides that he will just wait out the storm instead. As he takes his seat and accepts his fate of being stuck here, he sighs that it would be so much easier for him here if he could just use magic to just blow the rain away, but things don't work out so conveniently for him. And the rain must have taken his comments personally because several hours later, it is still pouring strong and is even raining slightly more as a little FU to Usato. While he is wondering what he is going to do, he hears a voice come around the corner and finds Inokami is still in school. Normally, everyone would have left school hours ago, so she asks what he is still doing here. But this is the first time he has ever been this close to, let alone had a conversation with a girl, so he is stumbling over his words like an idiot. She manages to piece his half sentences together and realizes that he must be stuck here because he doesn't have an umbrella. However, it is almost the school's lockup time, so the gates are going to be shut soon. Usato takes the hint and decides to just run through the rain, even though it definitely means he will get soaked. But Inokami stops him because it wouldn't be right for the student council president to let a student get himself drenched while she has an umbrella in her hand. But just as Usato was about to get the chance to share an umbrella with Inokami, Kazuki shows up and offers Usato his spare umbrella, which he keeps in his bag for occasions just like this. This move successfully cut Usato and dashed any dreams of physical contact with Inokami, but speaking of which, Inokami asks if Kazuki knows Usato since he is being very friendly with him. They are apparently in the same class, but remember, Usato's friend count is a total of 0, so Kazuki must have really put some effort into learning all his classmates' names. This is the first act of kindness that Usato has ever experienced, so even though he didn't get alone time with Inokami, it seems that he has managed to raise his friend count to 1. He is still a bit awkward, but Kazuki tells him there is no need to be so stuffed around each other since they are classmates, and seeing that Kazuki has become friends with him, Inokami gets in on the action, and they are now a trio of students. It looks like luck is finally on Usato's side as he went from holeless and friendless to just holeless. He gets to walk home with the popular kids, something all the other students would kill to be able to do, so he is finally doing something interesting. On the walk home, Usato talks about how he had thought Kazuki would be more of a ladies' man than he is since he is always seen talking with the girls in class, but the hoes just flock to him. There's nothing he can do about being good looking. Usato also thought Inokami would be far more unapproachable than she actually was since she is revered as a goddess by all the students. If she so much as sneezed in class, her snot would be bottled up and sold on eBay for $1,000. So getting to talk to her like this is still jarring to him. Just to get out of the way, Usato asks if they happen to actually be dating like the rumors say, but they deny it and say they are just around each other a lot, so it is natural that those kind of rumors would be spread. With that cleared up, Inokami asks Usato if he has any plans for the future or anything, but he hadn't really thought about it up till now. Kazuki finds it a little weird since she also asked him that question a while ago as well, but she brushes it off as just curiosity since she has no real hopes for her future. Basically, anything she tries ends in success without much effort, so she lacks any real ambition for her future and doesn't feel like she fits in here. She is literally suffering from success. While Usato has never really tasted success, he definitely knows what it feels like to not fit in, so maybe they are not so different. The three continue to walk when Kazuki and Inokami stops in their tracks because they claim to have just heard something that sounded a lot like church bells just now. They can hearing as clear as day, but Usato doesn't hear anything because he's being sidelined by the isekai forces. He gets closer to them to see if they are alright, and thus it gets pulled into the isekai portal, even though he was never actually meant to be there. The magic circle beneath their feet is about to teleport them, and they have a wide range of reactions from Kazuki's confusion to Inokami's utter excitement, and Usato, who gets cut off in the middle of what he was saying. Usato later opens his eyes to find himself in a palace before a king. After the initial shock of the situation, he asks Kazuki what is going on and why they are in such a strange place. But while their brains are still processing, Inokami is practically drooling from excitement as she realizes this is a fantasy and she's loving it. The king notices that they have all finally awoken, so he starts talking but gets cut off by Kazuki, who rightfully wants to know what is going on here. A guard tells Kazuki that he is being impertinent towards the king, but the king is fine with it since he did just basically kidnap a bunch of kids. He apologizes to them but asks that they at least hear him out before they make their judgments on what to do from here. He introduces himself as King Lloyd of the Linger Kingdom, and Inokami is only getting more excited as he talks. He goes on to explain that they were summoned to his kingdom as heroes, and Inokami has a minigasm on the floor from the sheer excitement. The king of demons had laid siege to his kingdom, and with a combined effort, they were successfully able to repel him for now. But since the demon lord is surely strengthening his army right now, they probably won't be so lucky next time. Thus, they decided it might be necessary to take drastic measures and turn to the forbidden spells of ages past that allowed them to summon heroes into this world with the potential to oppose the demon lord. That is a very plausible story, but Kazuki is missing the part where that became his problem. He was just living his life a moment ago, but now he's being asked to fight some demon lord and he's supposed to just be okay with it. He had a good life and a family that he loves, so he wants to be sent back to his world. But the king apologizes again and tells him that the summoning spell only works in one direction, so it isn't possible to send them back right now. This isn't good enough for Kazuki, who gets even angrier. But then he gets reminded that he is surrounded by armed guards who serve the king, so picking a fight here won't get him anywhere. The king gets down from his throne and walks up to three before kneeling before them. He swears that he will find a way to send them back to their original world in the near future. But in the meantime, he asks that they lend him their power to help save his kingdom and its people. Inokami calms her excited for a bit and asks the king why he keeps referring to them as heroes, even though he has no information on them, so he has his assistant, Wellesley, explain. The hero summoning magic circle contains a spell that seeks out individuals who could be potential heroes, which is why they would hear a bell sound before they are summoned. But that just means that while Inokami and Kazuki were the intended target, Usato just got dragged along for the ride and isn't a potential hero. We cut to the magic aptitude evaluation that they will be taking, and Wellesley instructs them to place their hand on this magic orb to determine their attribute and its strength. While Inokami is taking her turn, Kazuki asks Usato if he really isn't angry about the way things turned out for him. Not only was he summoned here against his will, it happened by accident too. But luckily for him, the king actually accepts responsibility for his actions, and despite the likelihood that Usato might just be a regular dude, he is still being treated well. Besides, Wellesley told him that there is still a chance that he might be able to use magic after all, so he might as well try. Usato is taking this a lot better than Kazuki was expecting, and then there's Inokami, who is still itching to get her grubby little fingers all over that ball. Once the preparations are complete, Inokami places her hand on the crystal ball, and it begins to glow with a brilliant yellow. This is indicative of the thunder element and also reveals that she has a huge mana reserve. Next up is Kazuki, and once he touches it, it begins to glow pure white, and this is one of the more rare abilities because only a few people can wield it. Light magic is the natural weakness against demons, so it will be a powerful asset in a war against them. Last up is Usato, but he doesn't have all that much hope that he'll be powerful. He just wants an ability that will allow him to be useful to his friends. He touches the orb and it begins to glow with a beautiful emerald green color, so he asks Wellesley what it means, but she's freaking the hell out and grabs him to go inform the king of what has just happened. She bursts into the throne room to meet the king and he asks what happened. She says Kazuki and Inokami both have great magical aptitude, but the real issue is with Usato's magic. The king doesn't understand what the big deal is and jokes that it wouldn't even be that bad if Usato's magic was the dark element. But Wellesley mentions that his aptitude test showed green, and the king's face immediately goes to "oh shit, this is bad." With how they are reacting, Usato wonders if he might be radioactive or something, but it is something much worse than that. The king starts making plans to relocate Usato somewhere else for his own safety. Usato asks if his ability is really that rare, but there is actually someone else who has it, and that is the problem because she is major bad news. And as if on cue, the woman they were talking about bursts into the throne room. Everyone who knows her has a look of fear on their face, but Rose is just being diligent in her service to the king. She was supposed to be on vacation right now, and she decided to come in and check on the status of the summoning ritual. She spots Usato there and asks if he is one of the heroes, but the king, trying to draw her attention elsewhere, says he is just a random kid who got caught up in the summoning ritual by accident. Rose believes him and introduces herself to Usato as the captain of the kingdom's rescue squad. Wellesley then redirects her attention to the crystal ballroom where Inukami and Kazuki are waiting, so Rose begins to leave, much to the relief of the king. He tells Usato that they will figure out what to do with him later, but for now, they will provide him with suitable accommodation. However, Usato still has many questions he would like to be answered since he never learned what kind of magic green is meant to signify. Unfortunately, this was said within earshot of Rose, and upon realizing that his magic is green, she immediately makes a move to kidnap the boy. The king initiates a code red and asks Wellesley to get Usato out of here for his own good, so she forms a magic bubble and has him racing out of the castle at high speed. But Rose is always up for a manhunt and chases after him at amazing speeds. She catches up to the bubble and with a single punch, bursts it along with the entirety of Usato's intestinal tract. From the courtyard, she tells the king that she will be taking Usato, but he doesn't need to worry because she will turn him into a proper healer with her training. The king can do nothing but watch as Usato gets abducted, and the news is later broken to Inukami and Kazuki. They ask if he is in any danger, but it's not like there is a threat of him dying, but there will definitely be psychological damage inflicted. Green signifies healing magic, which is extremely rare for one to possess, so Rose, as a healing magic user herself, took Usato to train him on how to use it. The only problem is that her training methods are a little, well, they violate OSHA regulations, health and safety requirements, and break a few restrictions of the Geneva Convention. Usato learns from Rose that his ability is that of a healer, so she plans to train him to become one, which is why she brought him here. She calls on the boys to meet Usato, and in an instant, he is surrounded by 5 big burly guys and pinned against a wall. All that's missing now is a camera and a white couch. Rose roundhouse kicks one of them and says they shouldn't scare Usato, so she carries on with her explanation. These guys are part of the rescue squad, but they aren't actually healers. There are 2 other healers in the rescue squad, but they are stationed elsewhere right now, so Rose is going to take on his training personally. And to put it lightly, Usato is screwed big time. There wasn't much he could do about the situation, so he chose to just sleep it off and see what happens. And as he awakens the next day, he finds that he is still in this world. The other members of the rescue squad who are currently getting breakfast ready come into the room and tell Usato that he has visitors here to see him. He is surprised to hear that and goes out to find Inumaki and Kazuki have come to check on him. They got worried when they heard that a green-haired lady just grabbed Usato and left, but it seems he actually isn't in any serious danger from his current condition. He tells them that he is fine, but then he remembers that he is still meant to be training under Rose today, and he is still thoroughly screwed because that walking tank of a woman is going to personally train him. He may be alive right now, but there's no telling if he will still be breathing by tomorrow. The others ask if the training is really that bad, and from what he has heard about it, it really is that bad. But he seems oddly calm about his fate since he already resolved himself to complete the training no matter what it does to him. There is nothing better for him to be doing anyway, so he might as well put up with it for now since it will give him a chance to not be so useless in this world. Inumaki finds what he says to be inspiring and makes a promise to do her best with her training as well, and that lifts Usato's spirits a bit as he starts talking about the kind of cool hero training they might do. The 2 later leave the rescue outpost to return to their training for the day, and as they go, Usato thinks those 2 are amazing for adjusting in this world so quickly. If possible, he would like to become someone who can help them in their various battles as heroes, which is why he is going to give his training everything he has got, even if it might kill him. Speaking of the devil, Rose comes out and asks if the heroes have finally left, startling Usato and making him give a very robotic response. Rose tells him to calm down since he is not in prison or anything. He is free to talk to his friends as much as he likes, as long as they are not training, of course. She throws a diary over to Usato and tells him to write down his training regimen or his experience here. And you know is going to be traumatic when they are giving you a diary before you even start training. She tells him they will begin after they are done eating breakfast, so he had better prepare himself. After breakfast, they begin their training, and surprisingly, it wasn't as bad as Usato had thought it would be. All they were doing was learning the basics of magic and how to control it, but for now, she tells him to just focus on the feeling of the magic in his body. Next, she asks him to read this thick-ass book, but he doesn't know how he is meant to do that when it is written in a language he doesn't understand. But she tells him to just take a look at it before he starts complaining. He opens the book and realizes that he can actually understand it despite having never seen this language before, and Rose attributes that to the translation spell that is cast automatically on anyone who gets brought into this world by the hero's summoning. She points to the first page of the book and shows him the location of the kingdom of Linger on the map as well as the location of the demons. And the kingdom is literally right next to the demon's front door, so the next time they decide to go on the attack, Linger is going to be the first to be attacked. She leaves and tells Usato to finish reading that book because it will tell him everything there is to know about this world and the nations in it. This part of the training wasn't so hard, but then day 2 came and he was made to run. He doesn't know how this was meant to help him with his magic, but he ran until his muscles gave out due to soreness, and once that happened, do you think he got to rest? Nope, Rose just slapped the shit out of his legs with healing magic until he could move again, and then told him to keep on running. He's going to run until he drops dead today, and after he dies, she will revive him with healing magic so he can keep running some more. This is the trauma the diary was meant to document. By day 4, Usato was training with the rest of the team out in the fields, and while he has gotten better since day 2, they are still passing him easily, so he has got a long way to go. He continued to run into day 5 and then day 6 until he slipped and fell in the rain. But the Hellish training seems to have had some effect because Usato can now see the glow of the healer light coming from his hand, but with all the pain he has had to go through, he can't even be happy about it. On the 7th day, there was still no rest for Usato as he was forced to run till his body gave out yet again, and on top of that, Rose kicked him in the butt with force that can split a tree in half. She tells him that the more he hates her, the harsher she will get, and true to her word, Usato got his butt kicked repeatedly, day after day, until his body was forced to learn how to output healing magic for its own survival. He was able to heal his broken butt, but not only that, he could now heal all the muscle soreness from running all the time on his own. Ever since he learned how to output his healing magic, he has been able to run indefinitely without getting tired, but even then, he is not sure if running laps every day make him strong enough to stand alongside Kazuki and Inumaki. He is keeping his doubts to himself in his diary for now because he already knows Rose would only punish him for thinking that way, and almost as if she can read minds, she yells that Usato has to do 30 more laps before he gets to stop running for the day. Now it's personal. Usato isn't doing this to help his friends anymore, he is just going to get through this training and prove Rose to that he can handle anything that she can throw at him. The next day, Usato had a new task added to his training regimen and had to do over 1,000 push-ups in one go. Usato is starting to get tired after over 800 push-ups have been completed, but torn muscle fibers aren't enough to stop him anymore since he can just heal himself when he gets tired. Rose finally tells him why she is pushing him to such lengths to strengthen his body, and it is because a healer is of no use if they get killed early in the round. He needs to have the physical strength to run away from the enemy if needed. The faster you can run on the battlefield means the faster you can save your allies from the brink of death, so it is very important that you strengthen your body as much as possible to be an effective healer. This time, Rose doesn't yell at him and just tells him to get back to doing his push-ups. The next day, his routine has become running all morning and then late into the evening. He does push-ups. This time, as he is doing his push-ups, he can feel that his body has gotten lighter for some reason, probably because the training is paying off. So to offset his new physical capabilities, Rose added weights to his workout routine for the next day. After that, Usato came into the house to find that his lunch had been stolen by one of the members of the team, and he wasn't going to stand for such injustice, so he was ready to lay the smack down on that guy if he can manage to catch up to him. He was complaining a lot at the beginning of the training, but now he is starting to get used to it more and more, which may not exactly be a good thing. A week later, and 21 days since Usato began his training, Kazuki and Inumaki pay him a visit. They are led to his training ground and they are shocked by what they see. Usato is doing push-ups, but these are absurdly difficult push-ups with the added weights of a 10-ton rock and Rose sitting on his back. Usato has started to grow the spine to talk back to Rose whenever she tries to insult his performance until he ends up saying that she is so light that this much is nothing. Shortly after, he began to regret those words as Rose decided to add another rock on top of the one that was already on his back, nearly flat out squishing Usato, but he still manages to hang on for dear life. He uses his healing magic to repair the broken bones he must have gotten and continues to push through the pain, and that's the kind of thing Rose loves to see. At this rate, she thinks she will be able to take Usato with her onto the battlefield sooner than expected. As Kazuki and Inumaki watch what just happened, Kazuki can't believe how cruel the training he is undergoing is, but all Inumaki sees are those mouth-watering muscles that Usato is now packing. The knight captain that came with them is outraged by what he just witnessed and yells at Rose for trying to break the spirit of a young man. This kind of training would have left any regular man crippled, but even if she could heal him afterwards, the psychological damage wouldn't be going anywhere. However, Rose doesn't see a problem with her methods since Usato seems to be adjusting to it well enough. Plus, she plans to have him be her right-hand man so she can't afford to take it easy on him just because of his sanity. Usato hears this, and this was never part of the agreement. He doesn't remember ever saying he would become her right-hand man or anything. Rose tells Usato that he can take a lunch break and catch up with his friends since she has things to talk about with Sigillus. So Usato, Kazuki, Inumaki, and Princess Celia, who accompany them, all go to have a chat under a tree where Usato learns that Sigillus is the strongest knight in the kingdom. It's currently the one teaching Kazuki and Inumaki how to use a sword in battle, which Usato finds awesome. That aside, he asks who this girl is, so she introduces herself as Princess Celia of the Olinger Kingdom, and realizing that she is the princess, Usato begins to bow and apologize if he was rude to her. Celia doesn't like the princess treatment, so she asks Usato to just treat her like any normal person. She brought a pastry for them all to share together, so they dig in. Kazuki asks Usato if his training is always as bad as it was today, but he actually had it pretty easy today compared to what he normally has to go through. Usato asks what kind of training Kazuki and Inumaki have been up to this entire time, so he recounts that they've been doing sword training with Sigillus, followed by some magic training with Welsi in the afternoon. But their mental health is still taken into consideration while they are going through the training, unlike what Usato has to go through, but he has lost enough brain cells, so he is used to it by now and it's not as bad for him anymore. Usato reaches for another slice of pie and Inumaki can't help herself and gets reeled down bad for Usato's rock-hard abs. Usato tries to change the subject before Inumaki can any more moist and asks if there was something Kazuki wanted to ask him. Kazuki says it's nothing much, he was just wondering if Usato was having a hard time here, and yes, he definitely is, but is much more manageable than it was when he first got here. He wanted to run away, but Rose was too fast, so he had no chance of escaping, but after doing it for a while and getting used to the new environment, he has started to think of this place as home and somewhat enjoy the training. He may just be being stubborn in the end, but since he is not a hero or anything, he wants to be able to assist them when they go into battle against the demon army. Just then, the guy who ate Usato's food a week ago shows up to bring Usato his lunch, but Usato has still got beef with him. They start trading blows with one another, and Usato will probably win since he can heal himself and the other guy can't. But the others wonder if they should intervene or something. Kazuki thinks it is fine since Usato seems to be having fun, so this is probably him at the happiest he could be. Knowing that Usato is alright, he decides it is time to go back to the castle and continue his training, so they all get up to follow him back. As Inumaki is about to leave, she thinks to herself that there must have been a reason that Usato got pulled into this world with them, so they should all try their hardest to become the best versions of themselves here. That night, after beating up the lunch thief, Usato takes a bath and thinks to himself that he is glad he got to see Inumaki and Kazuki. Although Inumaki kind of creeped him out back there with how she was looking at his body, but then again, he can't blame her because his body is awesome right now. He is faster, stronger, better, and this is all a result of the training he has constantly been doing, pushing his body to its very limits and then healing it back up with his magic for an incredibly fast growth rate. But even with his unbelievable muscle gains, he doesn't know if it will be enough to save people out on the battlefield. The next day, Usato is told that he will be heading out with Rose for the day. The others know what this means for Usato, but he is still oblivious, so he follows Rose out of the kingdom and into the forest. There, she tells him that he is not allowed to come home until he has killed a grand grizzly bear. And I may be missing a page, but I don't think Usato ever actually learned how to fight, but Rose doesn't seem to care and just tosses him into the forest with no assistance or guidance of any kind. On top of that, Usato doesn't exactly have fly hacks enabled, so unless he does something quick, we're going to have to cut the season short. As he is about to hit the ground, he turns around to face his problems and proclaims he won't let himself die here as he stretches his arms to break the fall. And while he ended up surviving, you know he's got to have at least 2 new elbows after that one. He takes a moment to heal his broken body and comes to terms with the fact that he is now stuck in this forest until he kills a grand grizzly bear like Rose had asked him to. He could still just leave without killing one, but then he would have to deal with Rose, and Usato would much rather handle a bear than her. Besides, it's just a 2-meter tall giant with razor claws. How bad could it be? It is actually pretty bad after all. The bear is much bigger than he had thought it would be, and looking at it up close is terrifying, so he backs out and uses the Joestar family's secret technique. He is sure that with all of his running practice, he should be able to outrun the bear with ease, but the bear never skipped leg day either. Seeing that he won't be able to outrun the bear anytime soon, he thinks back to all the hellish training he survived and grew enough confidence to turn around and tell the bear, "Come at me, bro." However, this was never a fair fight to begin with, as the bear had 2 others there to jump Usato's ass. He turned back around and kept running like his life depended on it. As he ran, he heard the sound of a rushing waterfall, so decides to use that to his advantage and escape the bears by leaping off a cliff and into the water. The bears stand and watch to see if he comes back up, But after losing interest, they all walk off, leaving Usato alive for another day. Meanwhile, Usato makes it out of the river and hangs his clothes up to dry as he finally takes a look at what he has in his bag, and he sees that he was given nothing but the bare essentials for survival. Some water, a knife, and some bread that can also substitute for a weapon to deliver blunt force trauma. He still doesn't know how he's going to manage to take out a grand grizzly, but there's no use worrying about that now as it has gotten too late to do anything more. So Usato just decides he'll deal with it tomorrow and covers himself so he can safely get some sleep. The next morning, he heads out and begins strategizing for the takedown of the grizzly bear, and the first thing on the agenda is to find out where the thing lives so he can plan out an ambush on it. He begins making his way through the forest and marking out his path so he doesn't get lost when he comes across some bear claw markings on a tree nearby. So he starts worrying that the bear might be nearby right now. However, as he draws his knife in preparation for a fight, all he sees is the head of a little bunny looking at him. The bunny appears to be hurt on its back foot, and even though he is still in a survival situation, Usato decides to be nice and heal the protein so it can live another day. He then gets back to his hunt for the grizzly, but now he has the protein following him around. He tries to tell it to leave him alone, but the bunny keeps following him around until he tells it to stop unless it knows where to find a grand grizzly. To his surprise, the bunny knew exactly where to find them and proceeds to lead Usato to the exact location of the grizzly bears who are currently sleeping. For now, he decides it would be best to just observe rather than going straight for the stealth kill achievement, so he heads back to camp. On day 3 of his forest trial, he is now forced to drink untreated river water, which I'm sure won't have any lasting effects. While he was collecting some, that same bunny comes up to him again, wanting to spend time together, so Usato agrees as long as it doesn't do anything rash while they are watching the bears again. There were no significant changes to the behavior patterns of the bears, and watching them act normal, Usato is starting to find them to be really cute. It also helps that he has this cute bunny around to accompany him, so he's having a bit of fun now. It's day 4 and Usato is no longer having any fun. He just spent all morning shitting his guts out thanks to that untreated river water, and healing magic has no effect on his current bowl blasting syndrome, but he has no other water source, so at this rate he's going to be done in by water. While writhing in pain, the bunny comes over to check on him, and Usato is happy he gets to see his bunny friend before he dies of water poisoning. But the bunny is more than just a cute companion. It actually has valuable information about the area and leads Usato to a pool of clean water in the forest. It may not be perfect, but it's definitely a whole lot better than river water. Just then, the bunny starts acting really weird and climbs up into a tree to escape for some reason. Usato doesn't know what is wrong, but he assumes it can't be anything good, so he gets into the tree with the bunny. It must be sensing that a predator is approaching, but what kind of monster could be making it react so strongly while it did seem to care while they were watching the grizzly bears? He gets his answer soon after as he sees this giant snake just cruising through the forest while looking for something to kill. This wasn't in the forest guidebook, but even he can tell that he must never go near that thing if he hopes to be able to survive this forest. As the snake passes, he breathes a sigh of relief and goes back to his normal routine. 4 days have passed since he encountered that giant snake in the forest, and he has finally started to get over the fear that it caused. He has kept on watching those grizzly bears and still finds them really cute, but the fact still remains that if he doesn't kill the grand grizzly, then Rose won't let him go home, so he is inevitably going to need to kill that bear sooner or later, so he decides that he will finally do it tomorrow. Tomorrow comes and his bunny friend keeps pleading with him not to go right now, but Usato needs to do this no matter what. So far, the bunny hasn't failed Usato yet, so he agrees to stay back at least until the rain stops. As the rain settles down, Usato heads off to finish what he was thrown in here to do and walks toward the den of the grizzly bears. But as he gets there, he finds that something else already beat him to the punch and killed the grand grizzly. From the look of the bite marks on the body of the bear, it must have been that snake that did this to them. And what's worse is that the snake was clearly just itching to kill something, since it clearly didn't kill them for food or because a scary healer lady was forcing him to do it. The baby bear tries to get its parents to wake up, but they are dead. Usato hates losing, which is why he kept up with Rose's unreasonable training methods, but more than that, he hates the scene of the baby bear losing its parents like this, so he swears to avenge it, which is pretty ironic considering that he was coming here specifically to kill him before. Back in the kingdom, Inumaki and Kazuki go to visit Usato again and are told that he isn't here at the moment. He has been out training in the forest for the past 10 days so far, but Kazuki thinks that is a bit too long to just be training and starts probing for the details of Usato's training regimen, but the guys don't want to give any details without Rose's permission, so they feign ignorance. Kazuki is still really worried about Usato, but Inumaki doesn't seem all that bothered, since from what she knows about Usato, he'll be fine. Meanwhile, Usato is preparing for war out in the forest, and after making sure he is ready, he asks the bunny to show him the way to the giant snake. Understandably, the bunny is hesitant to go anywhere near the snake, but Usato assures it that it won't have to stay there. All it has to do is lead him there so he can fight it. The bunny agrees, and eventually Usato comes across the den of the giant snake and finds the baby bear who just received his first defeat of his shonen career after trying to avenge his parents. It even has the scar for character development. Usato is scared at the sight of the snake, but he swore he would defeat it. That is what he's going to do. Besides, nothing is scarier than Rose, so this shouldn't be that bad. He runs forward and tries to stab the snake in the face, but nearly gets his face bitten off in the process. He manages to evade and stab the snake in the eye, successfully creating a blind spot for further attacks. However, the snake anticipated this and lured Usato into a trap for it to bite into its arm. But just as the snake thought it had won, found out that Usato has his second health bar. He managed to do some good damage to the snake, but now he's got the problem of being poisoned. Luckily, his bout of dysentery from earlier taught him a valuable lesson on how to deal with poison as a healer. If your insides have been affected, then just use healing magic to replace your insides. Having neutralized the effects of the poison, he runs forward to attack once more, and the baby bear is already on its power-up arc as it holds the snake in place, allowing Usato to get on top of it and bring it down with a skull-cracking punch. He then drives that spear through its brain until the snake finally stops moving and he believes the battle has been won. Usato collapses on the ground and gets approached by the bear, who has now reached to become friends with my former enemy Shonen Arc. It is grateful to Usato for avenging its parents, but Usato can't heal any of its injuries since completely replacing your insides takes a lot of magic power to do, so he can barely move anymore. Just then, the snake revealed that it also had a second health bar, and with Usato not being able to move, he curses Rose's name as he is about to be killed. But just before he dies, Rose comes crashing down from the sky and finishes off the snake by caving in its skull. Usato is confused why she is here, but Rose has been waiting outside the forest this entire time in case something bad happened. And that bunny that was following Usato around was actually her pet all along. She never actually expected him to win a fight against a grizzly. Even the best of the kingdom's knights wouldn't be able to handle one alone, so she just wanted him to gain experience by fighting a strong monster. But then this demon snake showed up and ruined it. It was a modified monster made by the demon army during their last invasion. Sigilise failed to finish it off, so it somehow ended up here, and she had to say that she is really impressed by how well Usato did against it. In regards to his training, he passed with flying colors, so she carries him out of the forest and back to that clifftop. She is proud of how much he has grown and tells him that he has the right to stand beside her on the battlefield. He has everything she is looking for: a strong body, high pain tolerance, and a strong will to go on. Though he still lacks battle experience, they need to make it in time with the training because the demon army will be making their move soon. Upon hearing the news, Usato believes she means that war will break out soon, and he is correct in that assessment. And when the war inevitably arrives, he will be tasked with healing the injured on the battlefront. This means that he's going to have to go out onto the front lines. Usato is a bit nervous about being on the front lines of a war, so he asks why the other two healers can't handle the front lines instead of him. While there are two other healers, Rose says they have other places where they are best suited, which is code for those two are wimps. But not Usato, as he has what it takes to keep up with Rose, and for that reason will be indispensable to the lives of the soldiers who will be relying on him. No pressure, but yeah, a lot of pressure. In any case, Usato still has time before he needs to start worrying about that, and hopefully by then, he will be ready. Meanwhile, on the Demon Continent, the Demon King asks one of his generals how the preparations for the planned invasion are going, and it looks like there will be no delay in their plans. He does expect to win, but is worth being cautious since the kingdom was able to repel their forces even if only temporarily. Thus, he puts his general in command and tells her that while he doesn't expect her to fight to the death out there, she had better at least come back with a KD ratio above 1. She promises to live up to his expectations, and Amila is dismissed from the meeting. As she exits into the corridor of the demon castle, she gets teased about being nervous in front of the king by her fellow general. Amila has better things to do than get teased by the furry doctor, so she begins to walk off. However, Huralik tells her that his latest animal experiment is going really well, so she could come check it out if she wants to. Curiosity gets the better of Amila, and she decides to go take a look at what kind of monster the doctor has cooked up this time. It's a giant snake with potent venom, but that's just the same as the one he made last time. And didn't it end up escaping after they poured a lot of their budget into it? The last one was defeated by a knight named Sigils and ended up escaping, but there is no need to worry as this one is far stronger than the last. Amila certainly hopes so, since there is a threat in the kingdom that is far greater than that of Sigillus. Hiralik knows what she is referring to, as he has heard the rumors as well. They are called the Kidnappers, since they just run out onto the battlefield and snatch up any of the wounded before dipping the hell out of there. The reason the Linger has been able to hold its ground is thanks to the works of these rescuers in minimizing casualties. And not only that, but their boss is a healer as well, so she's able to get wounded soldiers back into the fight while also being an abnormally fearsome fighter. A healer has no business one shooting bosses out on the field. But do you think Rose gives a damn? Amila's master and Rose have some history, so Amila hopes to be able to kill her with her own hands if they ever cross paths. Unfortunately, that won't be anytime soon, as since she was put in charge of the battle, she is not going to be taking part in any battles. The front lines are going to be handled by that guy over there, the immortal dark magic user. Meanwhile, Husadov has finally settled back into a normal life and is just glad to have a bed again. Early that morning, he heads over the pens to wake up his bear companion, and as it wakes up, he offers it some fruit that he found in the dining room. It seems to like it a lot, so Usado tries a bite of the fruit, and it apparently tastes a lot better than it looks. So that bunny that was spying on him for Rose wants a bite of it as well. Usado hasn't forgiven it for betraying him yet, but then again, it's a very cute bunny. Usado caves in and gives the bunny some fruit as well, but that makes the bear jealous, so Usado gives Blurin another one. Rose comes up to him and is judging Usado harder for his choice of name for the bear, but in any case, she told the king about the bear, and they got a budget extension to take care of it. Blurin is officially the property of the rescue squad, but that also means that he is going to be forced to pull his own weight around here. But in actuality, Usado is the one who is pulling all of Blurin's weight, as he is now carrying him on his back for training. Rose says this is necessary to simulate the situation where he will be carrying a person's body in his back and running through a battlefield. Rose tells him to start running already, so Usado sets off on his simulated battle run. As he is running, though, he gets attacked by the rest of the rescue squad, who were tasked with recreating the conditions on a battlefield, so they are all going to be after him for the entire duration of the run. An hour after the initial attack, Usado gets surprise attacked again by one of the guys popping out of the ground, and the other throwing poop water at him. Many other things are thrown at Usado, but he is able to dodge and evade most of them with ease. However, as 6 hours drag on, he finds that he is much more tired than he normally would be at this point and ends up collapsing. He knows that he normally should be perfectly fine with running for 6 hours straight, but his body has already given out. Rose comes up to him and explains that the reason he feels much more tired than usual is due to all the stress, anxiety, and frustration that comes with the environment of a battlefield. All the mental anguish slowly eats away at you until you physically can't go on any longer, and the best part is there's no way around it. You've just got to get used to it. Rose heals Usado and tells him that once his magic levels have been restored, he should go into town and run around before circling the castle for the rest of his training. All while carrying Blurin, of course. Usado does as he is instructed, and as expected, people begin to stare at him as he runs through the town carrying a blue grizzly bear. The people slowly realize that Usado is one of the members of the rescue team, so they now know that there is nothing to be worried about. Blurin's nose picks up a good scent, and he wakes up to tell Usado to follow the scent, which ends up leading them to a stall where the delicious fruit from that morning is being sold. Usado apologizes to the lady since he doesn't have any money on him to buy anything, but he asks what that fruit is called since he doesn't know what it is. She informs him that it is one of the country's signature fruit. Usado has one more question and asks why, even though he is carrying a dangerous monster in his back, the people here don't seem to be freaking out at all over it. So the least explains that it's because they know he is part of the rescue squad. They can tell by the dusty outfit he is wearing, and from time to time, the other members of the rescue squad would run through town. So if the people could get used to those guys' ugly faces, then there isn't much that can scare them anymore. Usado thanks the lady for the information and promises to come back some other time and buy some fruit from her. But before he leaves, the lady offers him one for free to commemorate their acquaintanceship. Usado thanks her for the fruit, but he doesn't get to enjoy even a bite of it, as Blurin chomps down on the entire thing and also a bit of Usado's arm as well. Usado gets moving again, and as he leaves, a girl who was assisting the old lady comes out and asks if the boy who just left happens to be a part of the rescue squad, and it seems like she might have some interest in him. As Usado was getting closer to the castle, he decided that he might as well visit the others since he was here anyway. But as he continued to run, a blonde man notices him and starts trying to catch up to him, but he clearly can't keep up at all. Usato notices him as he is about to die of exhaustion and turns around to get him to a place where he can rest and be healed. This guy is named Orga, and he is one of the other healers that were mentioned earlier. And while he seems quite nice compared to Usato, Rose was right, he's a wimp. Orga is really impressed that Usato can manage to keep up with Rose's training regimen, as it was impossible for him and his sister to do so at all. His sister is the other healer who is 5 years younger than him, and they run a clinic in the town healing the citizens with their magic. However, if he is so good with healing magic, then how come he wasn't able to heal himself to recover his stamina while he was chasing Usato? In Orga's case, he just isn't very good at healing himself, but he's much better when it comes to healing other people. Usato asks what Orga's role is on the battlefield, and for the most part he stays in the rear while the members of the rescue team bring the injured back to be healed. Usato reveals that Rose had asked him to join her out on the front lines, but honestly, he doesn't know if he is cut out for something like that. Orga understands what Usato means and explains that in battle, the ones who are in the greatest danger are always the knights and magicians on the front lines. This reminds Usato that his friends fall into the category of people who are sent to the front lines and have to fight there. Warriors on the battlefield who get injured can usually do nothing but wait for death to come knocking as they bleed out. Their only saving grace are the healers running around to save them, and while Orga knows it is a dangerous and exhausting job, he also knows that Rose wouldn't choose someone to go out with her unless she truly believed that he could handle it. Orga needs to get back to his clinic soon before his sister gets upset with him. So Usato gets up to continue his training, but before he leaves, Orga asks him not to hate Rose too much since she may be a little abrasive at times. As Usato leaves, Orga's sister Ruru shows up and scolds him for leaving without her since he has the stamina of a 5-year-old. Orga says he's fine, but more importantly, he got to meet someone very interesting, and he's sure she'll like him the next chance they get to see each other. Usato makes it up to the castle and is worried that Blurin won't be allowed inside since he is a monster, but to his surprise, the king already gave permission for him to go in with the bear. Usato enters the castle and finds Inumaki training with some of the knights, so they sit down to talk. Usato starts narrating the story of what happened to him while he was training but Inumaki is too distracted by how fluffy Blurin is. She asks if it is okay to pet him, and Usato says it's fine, even if she gets her hand bitten. He can just heal her afterward. Inumaki reaches her hand out to pet him, and she indeed gets bitten. After Usato heals her, she asks if he came all the way here just to visit her, trying to get a tsundere reaction out of him, but he really did just come here to see her. Kazuki as well, but it seems like he's not here right now. He went out with Sigillus and some of the other knights to gain experience in the forest, so when he gets back, it will be her turn to go get experience. Usato is sure she will do fine and tells her as much before getting up to finish off his training for the day. That night, Usato meets with Rose and tells her that he was terrified to set foot on the battlefield, but today he realizes that he is even more terrified of losing his friends. So while he can't fight and won't kill, he will save everyone that he can, and Rose is happy to hear him say that, as those are the ideals of a true member of the rescue squad. The next day, Usato is woken up by a bag dropped on his chest as the king has issued an order for him to head out. He will be accompanying Inumaki on her upcoming training mission. As they head out, Usato asks Rose why he needs to accompany Inumaki on her training in the first place. After all, Kazuki had someone as powerful as Sigillus accompany him. She tells him that he was actually meant to join Kazuki as well, but at the time he had just returned from his forest adventure, so she refused the king's request. However, the king sent another request for a healer, and she couldn't exactly deny his request twice, so Usato needs to go now. But there's nothing to worry about since he is not going as combat support, he is just there in case they need a healer. They arrive at the castle gates, and Inumaki is surprised to see that Usato will be joining them on the expedition, and even better, she gets another chance to play with Blurin since Usato brought him along. Though the real reason Blurin is here is because he kept biting everyone's hand, so he can't leave him at base. Moving on, Inumaki decides to introduce Usato to the rest of the party, so he meets Iruku the Knight and Korin the Mage. Usato is pretty sure he has already met the knight before, and he is right as he sees him guarding the castle gate on his morning run. Just then, Rose walks up to Inumaki and warns her that Usato's healing magic isn't a get-out-of-death-free card. It can heal wounds and cure poison, but there are limits to its capabilities. Thus, she shouldn't take it for granted. But considering she was trained by Sigillus, she shouldn't need to be healed too often. Rose walks off, and Inumaki remarks that she is really strong. She's never been in the military before, but hearing Rose made her instinctually salute. They get on with the expedition, and we get a look at Kazuki as he is training with his sword. The princess comes up behind him and scolds Kazuki for working his body even harder despite being so fatigued from training, and even in this world, it is clear that the hoes still flock to him. Celia is worried for his well-being, but he assures her that he is perfectly capable of handling this much exertion. Meanwhile, Usato hears from Inumaki about the condition Kazuki was in when he returned from training. He was worn out from battling monsters while he cleared the forest, but he said the battle experience was worth the pain, and now they are going out to do the same thing. Usato recalls what happened last time he was in that forest, and he wonders if Blurren misses his home after being gone for this long. But speaking of Blurren, Inumaki asks if he will be waking up anytime soon, because if not, she wants to pet him. Normally something like that would be fine, but with how her hands were wriggling, I'm pretty sure we can classify that as a crime. Usato is not about to let Blurren get fondled in his sleep, so he smacks Inumaki's hand away repeatedly. She can't believe Usato is being so cruel to her, but really, she's the one to blame for acting creepy. All the commotion ended up waking Blurren up, and as he is now conscious again, Usato lets him down so he can walk on his own again. However, I'm not sure if you can call that walking. Seeing that Blurren is still really sleepy, Inumaki seizes the opportunity to offer him a piggyback ride so she can get some consensual physical contact. And while she doesn't get to feel his fur, I have to ask, was it worth it? Usato ends up having to heal her, and they continue the journey while he asks her to save the dangerous stunts for when they are in actual combat. And soon after, combat arises as Korin locates multiple entities up ahead. Aruku asks if it is monsters, but no, it's something much worse. People. Realizing that they've been found out, the bandits come out, upset that their plan to ambush the party has been ruined. They yell for the party to hand over all their valuables, but Aruku refuses to do so. The bandit leader isn't exactly giving them much of a choice and threatens the group with the large number of bandits that they have present. Meanwhile, Usato is what these idiots are up to because they are clearly trying to be bandits, but they don't seem very intimidating to him. The same goes for Inumaki, who is just excited to finally get her fantasy bandit fight. The bandits take a closer look and realize that the group have a blue grizzly with them, and while the rest of the bandits want to do the smart thing and run, the bandit leader urges them to stay since it is just a baby blue grizzly. They may even be able to capture it alive and sell it on the black market if they're lucky. Hearing them threaten her beloved Blurren, Inumaki fires a thunderbolt at one of the bandits, and surprisingly, the guy is still alive afterwards. Usato praises her for her control in her blast and tells her she's free to go wild. If any of the bandits get hurt really bad, then he will just heal them so they don't die. Thus, Inumaki proceeded to electrocute all the bandits, leaving just their leader standing. While Aruku is fighting the leader, Korin detects something else coming their way, and it is pretty fast too. So before Aruku can react, they are hit with a stampede of boars. These monsters usually live much deeper in the forest, so for them to be all the way out here, something really bad must have happened. Blurren steps out to defend Usato, but that leaves Inumaki open to be attacked, so to save her from a painful death, Usato uses his body to protect her and gets flung several feet into the air. He uses his healing magic to regenerate all the damage that they are surely going to take from this fall as they crash through trees and off the side of a mountain into a river. He remembers that he's been in this river before, so he knows there's a huge waterfall up ahead and warns Inumaki to brace herself. Usato opens his eyes to find Inumaki standing over him and try and move his body to safety, but there was no need for all that since Usato already healed himself and was just resting after he dragged Inumaki out of the river. In any case, he wants to heal that cut on Inumaki's face before they do anything else, and she apologizes for having things come to this while they were out training. Usato says it's fine, and if he had to be stranded with anyone, then he is glad that it was her. But still, he never would have imagined that he would end up back in this forest so soon after he left. Inumaki is confused by what he means, so Usato explains that he got yeeted into the forest a while back, so he knows that it is full of monsters even more powerful than the boars that got them into this mess. They lay out everything they got on hand, and unfortunately, they lost most of their rations and supplies, so they're in a pretty tight corner when it comes to food and water for the night. Inumaki asks why they don't just escape the forest right now, but from the look of things, it will be dark soon, and it might rain, so trying to leave the forest through all that might be a little difficult. For now, they should try to find a safe place and set up camp for the night. Last time he was in the forest, he would just sleep in the tree branches, but Inumaki has never climbed a tree before since her family would never let her have fun. As a compromise, Usato suggests that they head into a cave instead, as it will shield them from the rain as well. And now that they've settled their shelter issues, Usato mentions that it would probably be a good idea to get out of those soaking wet clothes. She agrees and goes over to a corner to change, but then she gets embarrassed and thinks Usato might peek at her. However, he hadn't even thought about doing any like that. Later on, Inumaki uses her lightning powers to catch them some dinner by electrocuting the entire population of salmon, and then starting a fire so they can cook that salmon. Usato is so glad to have her around because she is really useful in these kinds of situations. He takes off his clothes to have them dry off and sits by the fire to warm up a bit. Inumaki is over in the corner of the room, staring at the wall, so Usato apologizes if he made her feel uncomfortable, but it's just because after staring at his muscles, she's having trouble keeping her composure. She looks up and spots 4 glowing red eyes looking back at her, but rather than a spider as one would assume, it turns out to be a group of venom monkeys. Usato says he has read about these before and they shouldn't be aggressive, so it is safe to be this close to them. However, they do have venom in their name, so she should avoid touching them. Unfortunately, Inumaki never learned to keep her hands to herself and gets herself poisoned. Meanwhile, back at the castle, they have just received word from one of Korin's familiars that Inumaki and Usato have both gone missing. Kazuki is beside himself after hearing this and asks if a search party has already been assembled. The king assures him that the search party will be dispatched in the morning, but that isn't good enough for him, so he prepares to head out by himself. Before he can leave though, Rose gets in his way and assures him that there is no reason for him to be concerned for their safety. After all, Usato has survived far worse, and if he is alright, then Inumaki will survive as well. Rose was right, as after curing Inumaki's poison, they had a great lunch of fish, and Usato is really grateful that he has his own personal sparker with him. Inumaki doesn't like being compared to a piece of camping equity, but she is getting pretty sleepy, so Usato suggests that they take turns getting some rest. He's fine with letting her sleep first, but she feels bad after making him heal her so much since they got here, so she wants him to rest first so he can recover his magic. As the rain begins to pour, Inumaki calls over to Usato to see if he is still awake, and after he responds, she asks how he feels about them being summoned. That's a tough question since he wants to go back, but at the same time, he now has a reason to stay here as well. Inumaki doesn't want to go back, and Usato has a good idea of why. It's because she has nothing left for her in their original world, so she's much happier here. Usato sees nothing wrong with her way of thinking, as he also wanted to change. When they first got here, he trained so hard just because he didn't want to become a burden to her and Kazuki, but now he wishes to protect them along with all the people of the kingdom. Inumaki feels the same, so they agree to forget about Earth for now and just worry about saving this kingdom first. The next morning, they begin making their way out of the forest when they encounter something in the bushes. They are on edge at first, but it turns out to be Blurrin and the others who finally found them. Aruku is exhausted from having to chase Blurrin all the way here, and once he is healed, explains that they were searching for Usato and Inumaki when Blurrin suddenly started sprinting, so they thought he might lead them to Usato. Unfortunately, Blurrin was fast as hell, but now that they are all reunited, they prepare to leave the forest together. This was the end of episode 5. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.